Alright, this is our next thing, Gilded Age Politics. There's only two here. Um, this one is national politics, and then we'll look at some other things, alright? First off, we run through an area of presidents, Garfield, Chester Arthur, Grover Cleveland, Benjamin Harrison, that we call the forgotten presidents. They call them these because during the Gilded Age, the President of the United States really didn't have any power. It was going back to the business. You remember that political cartoon of the senators and all the people in the back. Basically, they were seen as facilitators of jobs. You helped to get me in this power, and now I'm going to give you jobs. And so for this reason, we call them forgotten presidents. Now, one of the big things we have here is called patronage. Patronage can be defined as helping people out. If you go to a restaurant, they say you're a patron. That means you are paying for some type of service. So under patronage, these people were essentially paying for a job. I'm going to pay you to get elected, and you're going to help me get a job. Now, it's seen a lot. It's a little bit different because, like I said, it's paying people. But sometimes we call it spoil system, and maybe that's wrong, but it's okay for here. But a spoil system is a little bit different. A spoil system, rather than, and it can be going along with patronage, but also is helping out your friends. And so there's a problem with that. There's an interesting video I'll show you in class called the Nature Walk, and I have a cool little story to go about that to explain the dangers of the spoil system. In the South, they might call this the good old boy system. Maybe some things you've heard about. The spoil system is giving political jobs to loyal supporters and or friends. King of this was Andrew Jackson. He was really big. Now Grant was good as too. But for right now, there we go with those. Now, we have a major scandal under Grant called the Credit Mobler scandal. Railroads were the name of the games, remember that? And so what happened is the Union Pacific stopped paying their workers. And they said, oh, you're going to get paid, you're going to get paid. And they basically pocketed it. It's a really, actually, interesting, cool story. I have to hit it really quickly because there's a ton of stuff here. But in short, they were paying bills from companies that they owned, and they were saying they were inflated, so they're paying these extorted bills. The money's not really going anywhere, but they're just getting all this extra money, and they're paying the senators to keep their mouth shut. Now, this is really major, and it exploits a lot about the dangers of railroads and robber barons. And now the picture I have for you here, one guy who was involved in it was named James Garfield. He was a senator, and later he becomes a president, and he is kind of the end of the spoil system because of what happens to him. So let's talk about it. James Garfield, as president, will become our second president to become assassinated. He was shot by a man named Charles Gitio. That's close enough, right? And basically, it's like the little cartoon here front says, an office or your life. This man felt, I had gotten you elected. I had become your patron and paid your way. You need to reward me with a job. Problem is, he couldn't, so Gitio pulled out his gun and shot him. And this is where somebody said, oh, we've got to stop doing this patronage, this spoil system, because this is a bad idea. So, because of James Garfield's assassination, Congress passes the Pendleton Act, but it's also called the Civil Service Reform Act. Now, they called this the Magna Carta. This basically said that you could not use the spoil system. It set up a couple of things. Number one, it set up something called the Civil Service Commission. It's no longer around. It was replaced in the 1980s. But the Civil Service Commission basically decided, are you putting the right people there? Are they your friends? Are they well qualified? Is a big word, highly qualified. And the other thing it decided was a competitive exam. You thought tests were done when you got out of high school? You are wrong. So a competitive exam is going to, you get on the Civil Service Commission list, and then they can give you a job. That's how it worked. And the whole idea was to stop using the spoil system so that we didn't have all these other things going on. So here's the Civil Service Commission. Civil Service Commission basically restructured how the civil service this is the Reform Act, allowed managers to make and implement policy decisions at lower management levels. It made it easier to hire, fire, or reassign bureaucrats. A bureaucrat is basically a big-time politician type thing. It enacted whistleblower protections and things like that. And it did allow cash bonuses for meritorious performance. Basically, if you're doing a good job, you're going to get a raise. So that was our national politics, our first thing there. Forgotten presidents and the spoil system, Garfield getting blown away, and it wasn't about lasagna. Maybe data reference, go look up the orange cat. Anywho, there you go with that one.